Tonight, 200 years on, the bittersweet homecoming for the children of slavery.
We are proud African people.
But Africans aren't so sure. They call the American returnees a Bruni, meaning whites.
Don't charge me old Bruni prices. If you charge me old Bruni, I don't buy.
And violence in the shadows. The ugly side of the beautiful city of St. Petersburg. Hello and welcome to Foreign Correspondent. I'm Eric Campbell in Ghana. This West African coastline is where millions of people were shipped out as slaves to the Americas. Well, it's 200 years since Britain abolished its slave trade, but the impact has never ended. Now, thousands of descendants of those Africans sent out in chains are coming home to the land of their ancestors. In a land once called the Gold Coast, European castles bestride the African shore like alien invaders. They were built as early as the 15th century and used by Portuguese, Dutchmen, Danes and Britons to imprison and ship out slaves. Today, they're memorials to a trade that shamed humanity.
Over 500 years ago, our ancestors were taken away from these shores in the bowels of ships, brutally raped, robbed of their culture, and taken to faraway places, to strange lands.
Vienna Robinson is part of a black diaspora that's come back.
You are what we have been waiting for.
Even adopting African dress and names. This former New York travel agent now calls herself Sister Imakus Njinga.
We are no longer coons and niggers. We are proud African people who are here where we're supposed to be. We make no apologies to anyone for what we are doing or how we are doing it. We stand proud as African people.
And she's helping other African Americans make the journey, giving advice on migration, organising tours, and staging reenactments to show what their ancestors suffered.
Mothers, take your children.
Europeans kidnapped or bought slaves across West Africa. All were marched overland to the Gold Coast ports. This land, now called Ghana, has become the first stop for African Americans tracing their roots. They can visit the very dungeons where slaves were crammed in like cattle before being shipped to the Americas.
We come to give homage to our grandmothers and great-grandmothers who were forced to pick cotton in the hot sun, who were forced to bear babies by men that they did not know, nor did they care to know.
Hallelujah. Oh, yes.
Who spent 3 or 4 months at a time.
The experience of coming to Cape Coast, the largest of Ghana's slave ports, brings out raw and long-suppressed emotions.
For too long, we were not even considered human. We built this world. So how can you tell me some crap about a founding father in America who owned my parents?
Many African Americans come here as a spiritual pilgrimage, never intending to stay.
But it's okay, because you have made the journey.
Thousands do stay, transformed by an experience that changes their lives.
When I went into the castle dungeons, I knew when I came out that I would never be the same person again. It was emotional. I remember crying and hearing people screaming and seeing all of these women, people laying all over the ground, sick, crying, and I was in that. And then it was as though I could feel all of these hands, people touching me, embracing me, you know, telling me not to cry, you know, that it was all right, that everything was going to be fine.
Sister Imakus was one of the first to make the move.
But for the most part.
In 1990, she and her cab driver husband, Nana Ababio, set up a hotel near Cape Coast, leaving their urban jungle for good.
It was a treat to get together to go to the beach, but now I find myself at the beach every day, so there's a vast contrast.
Still the Atlantic.
Still the Atlantic.
Yeah, right?
They came of age in the heady civil rights struggle of the 1960s, amid a growing sense of Pan-African nationalism. Their children thought they were crazy.
Well, they were angry for a long time. That hurt. That really, really hurt. But the opportunity to return to the land of one's ancestors, to be able to make that real connection with who it is that you are, your true identity, the sacrifice of family was worth it. Because 16 years later, our family are beginning to come.
Up to 5,000 blacks are believed to have moved to Ghana from North America, the Caribbean, Brazil and Europe. For many, it's been a bittersweet homecoming.
Yes, this is home. This is our new home. We've been here approximately 5 weeks now. Of course, we've been in Ghana going on 4 months.
And this is where we plan to have our entertainment room, which in...
Dr. Adwoa Asatiwa left a university professorship to move to Cape Coast with her husband, Kwaku.
We decided to relocate.
As expected, they found they can live in relative luxury on their savings.
So if you're going to retire, this is a better option than going to Florida? Or...
Oh, absolutely. Well, Florida, if you go to Florida, you have to start with $1 million up front, and that's not going to buy you too much in Florida.
But they've had to come to terms with a disturbing discovery. The Africans they see as brothers and sisters see them as strangers.
We wanted to feel like we had come home. However, we later found that we weren't that welcome by the native population. We weren't welcome is because they don't know us, and we don't know them.
It takes just a short visit to the local market to see the gulf of 500 years of separation.
I don't want smoke, I want fresh.
Most locals don't even regard them as fellow blacks.
You have Gruba, I want Gruba. You have...
They call them a Bruni, meaning whites.
How much you gonna charge me? And don't charge me old Bruni prices. Beanie. If you charge me old Bruni, I don't buy. I like you, so I'm gonna buy. I'll pay 1,000, but I know you overcharge me.
So is she a Bruni? She's a Bruni, is she?
Yeah.
So I'm not old Bruni. I'm Bibini.
Okay.
Okay, yo, Ashanti. It is not a very pleasing way to be identified. You know, we don't want to be called a Bruni because we certainly weren't treated like a Bruni in the U.S. By any stretch of the imagination. We were treated as African people. So that is a challenge.
She's also found that people have little sympathy for them as descendants of slaves.
They don't know the They don't know who we are. They don't know that we are Abebu. They don't know that we are descendants of the Africans that were taken here through enslavement into the various Americas. They don't understand that for the most part. But our task and our challenge is to bring this information back to our brothers and sisters here.
Dr. Adwoa wants to learn from Ghanaians, but also teach them how to do things properly, beginning with basic hygiene.
Now you notice too that they have open sewers.
Yeah.
Now that is definitely a health hazard. Yeah. And many times you will find that people will be eating and selling food and right underneath these open sewers, which certainly is not good to our health. And of course, these are issues and problems that exist in Ghana, that exist amongst our people, and we have to try and educate them to the realities of how this kind of living and situation can fester disease.
Now, if I came here as a white person telling them what to do, they'd probably be very offended.
Yeah.
As black people, do you think you've got more of a leeway to...
I think we may have more of an edge.
Yeah.
Not according to many middle-class Ghanaians who are now proudly celebrating 50 years of independence from Britain. Communications consultant Solomon Parker welcomes the returning Africans, but not some American attitudes.
They should not come in here thinking that they have the right to change things and they have been given a God-given right to go on a mission to change the world.
We are aggressive. Aggression was something that we had to have in order to survive in America.
No, that's fine. I want it.
You didn't survive in America being very passive. It's kind of hard after being like that in America, then you find yourself in Africa, and then you want me to sit back and become passive. I sometimes have to sit on my lips, you know, bite my tongue.
Perhaps the biggest disconnect is that many simply don't understand why Americans would come here. Most Ghanaians earn less than $2 a day. The number of African Americans returning is dwarfed by the number of Africans trying to get to America. The sight of rich new arrivals only increases the envy.
Now, if you're a waiter and you're standing in a restaurant and you're watching African Americans come in, or other Ghanaians who have been outside the country, come in to eat and spend about 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times what you earn in a day on one meal with their family, then of course you're going to want to go to where they are to try and create a better life for yourself.
The irony is that many African Americans believe Africa offers them a better future than America. Mimi Igyan left a comfortable home in Atlanta to bring her 3 children and her mother Carly to a small rented house in Cape Coast.
In the United States, you never really feel at home. When you're always feeling like you're under pressure, you know, you're under so much stress by the police officers, by all the authority figures, you never feel comfortable. You know, you never are free to just roam about without someone treating you disrespectfully or just treating you like a criminal or treating you like you're not even a person. So I feel very good coming here, even though with all of its quirks and its inconveniences, you know, it's still home. It's still home, so we feel very good being here.
The children attend a local African school, living no differently from the villages around them.
I felt as if they were being molested by American culture. You know, American culture is too sexually driven. It's got a lot of violence in it.
Forever and ever, amen.
The schools my children were attending in the United States had become almost prisons. And so we're happy for them here. They have the breezy classrooms, you know, and they get to sing and just enjoy being a student, you know, and enjoy being a kid. It didn't take but maybe 2 weeks when the children said they wanted to stay. They say they really like it here, they want to stay. So I believe we're going to stay. I don't think anything could send me back.
Until recently, few Ghanaians gave much thought to the legacy of slavery. It was seen as something Europeans did in the distant past. The government is now holding a series of celebrations to mark the 200th anniversary of Britain's abolition of slave trading. The Wilberforce Abolition Bill was a powerful moral statement, but it didn't end the slave trade. Liverpool merchants ignored the ban for another 25 years, the US continued shipping human cargo until the Civil War, and Arab and Portuguese traders didn't stop until the end of the 19th century. What's more, the African Americans who've come here believe passionately that the stigma of slavery has continued to the present day.
I don't see it as a form of celebration that Ghana should be participating in. You want us to celebrate the abolition of a slave trade that you were responsible for starting or participating in? No, I think that that's hypocritical. And I personally would have nothing to do with that.
Yes, we have lights down there. When you go to the light, turn right.
The anniversary has at least focused attention on what slaves and their descendants suffered.
Once you are a slave, they bought you, so you are a property to the officials here.
For the first time, children are learning that it wasn't just Europeans involved in the trade.
And those behind the trade were some chiefs, and they were exchanged for ammunitions like gunpowder, drinkables like whiskey, schnapps, and even ordinary mirror.
The return of the diaspora is slowly making a mark across the country. There's even a steamy jazz joint in the capital, Accra. And the customers aren't all Americans. Joey J was a London DJ before deciding 17 years ago to chill out in West Africa.
It's peaceful. I'd rather be here than Iraq or West London.
It's a totally different life, but one he'd like many others to follow.
You got to secure your future, you know, and sometimes in life you have to realize that you're getting older and prepare for your old age.
Yeah.
So that's what I've done. So whatever I do after this, I'll probably be running around the world DJing, but at the moment I just need somewhere where I can put my head down and not think about getting on the 266 bus.
He's now developing a housing cooperative for returnees. In a rare sign of reconciliation, a Volta River chief granted the land in compensation for his ancestors' role in kidnapping slaves.
People from the Caribbean, Brazil, of African descent, you can come and purchase land here and come and live.
Little touch of paradise.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. A nice spot, isn't it?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Very picturesque, very calm. I get involved with the local people, find out what they eat, the culture and everything, and then you find you can slip in.
Some long-term settlers wonder if they'll ever be completely accepted.
Hey, small girl, what's your name? Evelyn Atta. And what class are you in, Evelyn Atta? Class 2? How old are you?
The government encourages the black diaspora to visit Ghana, but Amicus suspects what it really wants is their money.
Money? You want money? You should give me some money. And that's the impression that you get, is to bring your resources, you know, bring your money and stuff like that, but don't stay long, okay? And as far as I'm concerned, anywhere in Africa, wherever the spirit leads us to be, We have the right to go there and settle.
The slaves who left these castles had no chance of ever returning.
Because many of them didn't know that some of their descendants would return through this door of no return.
Their descendants are coming back in their name, closing the circle on half a millennium of misery. They are still to close the gap that separates them from the African-born. 200 years after slavery here was abolished, they are finally starting to feel free.